Divine greetings, ones and zeros, zeros and ones, boys and girls that are now men and women, kings and queens, gods and goddesses, spiritual beings of this divine matrix. Welcome to this live episode, to this live series. My name is Clay. And today I'm going to continue talking in this Cancer New Moon. And the Cancer New Moon day is sacral moon. The moon day is a sacral day, and the weekday or the strong day is the throat day. So that's how it is, the emotional expression, because the sacral has to do with our emotions and the throat has to do with the expression, whether you're expressing truth or lies, and in your emotions, whether you're feeling guilt or pleasure. Guilt being the negative, pleasure being the positive, guilt being the feminine, no, correction. Guilt being the, nonetheless, I'm going to continue, right? So, guilt being the negative, pleasure being the positive is what I should say, is what I am saying. So now, in this expression, I'm talking about the emotions. And for those who have been following the channel, I'm talking about my expressions coming from the point of view of spirituality. So I'm observing my spiritual status, my spiritual being, my spiritualness. As I'm observing my spirituality, I acknowledge that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. Now, one of the things that I have noted in this experience, how I came into this experience, is through a schizophrenic break. Before the schizophrenic break, I would say I practiced conscious living. However, that conscious living was still based in the 3D. And as it was based in the 3D, then I didn't even have an understanding of what the 3D realm was. However, it was more of a conscious way of living. And it was also a type of intellectual religion. Conscious living is kind of an intellectual religion. Now, let me see, who is this? Did your husband give you permission to do this? So there is a troll on the line. Now, as I talk about before I was a conscious being, having a religious experience and didn't know about it. Now I'm seeing that after the schizophrenic break, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And one of the main things to acknowledge in this is that in the schizophrenic break, or coming through the schizophrenic break, the mental break, I realized that I was being, or I had being a covert narcissist. And in being the covert narcissist, it's something that is going to travel with me for the rest of my life. In accepting who it is that I am being, that is something that is the truth. And it is in accepting that I've been a covert narcissist, I know that I have the tendency to be a covert narcissist. Now, in being the covert narcissist, one of the things that I encountered is I have a memory of past life experiences. Not in being the covert narcissist, but in being having the schizophrenic break. Because schizophrenia, and let me give you my experience as to what schizophrenia is. Schizophrenia is the fragmentation of the mind. And what that means is that if you tell a lie to someone or to yourself, at some point that lie is going to look to come back to you in some way, shape, or form. And when that lie comes back to you in some way, shape, or form, if you do not recollect that you made the lie, you're not going to recognize who it is that told the lie in the first place, which is yourself. So you're going to be fragmented in the mind. And that is what I see schizophrenia as. The medical field has their definition of what schizophrenia is. I, who have gone through and keeps the memory of the exposure to schizophrenia, have my own terminologies that I use. And I would go on to say that schizophrenia, that human beings have schizophrenic tendencies, because it's a part of the process of coming here. A part of the process of coming on to this earth is that you're going to forget what it is. So you are fragmented in coming here. And it is for you to remember who it is that you are. And in remembering who it is that you are, you become wholesome, or become more wholesome. Because some of us come here being more wholesome than others. And those of us who come here and are more wholesome are the more empathic ones. And those who come more fragmented are the more narcissistic ones. And the empathic ones listen to their intuition more than they listen to their ego. And the narcissistic ones listen to the ego more than they listen to their intuition. Now, I'm seeing that I've had the experience of being both. And when I say both being the egoic person and both being the intuitive person, I'm now getting into being the intuitive person. It is the intuition which I followed, which I humbled myself to, which got me out of being in the schizophrenic mind state and keeps me out of being in the schizophrenic mind state. So I'm going to give an example of this. What do you say? I'm going to give an example of what it is I'm talking about. So in this sacred new moon, one of the expressions that I've come into is as I have children, okay, let me go forward to a correction. I'm going to talk about the new moon aspect. And the new moon aspect has to do with the rise in the ethereal nature, as the full moon has to do with a rise in the, what do you call it? Has to do with a rise in the physical nature. And when I say a rise, I'm talking about a rise in the emotions. Emotions that I'm referring to are the energy in motion, that which moves you. And that which moves you has to do with where it is that you are, who it is that you are. I'm seeing that I am that I am. And in being I am that I am, I know how it is that I have used my energy, how it is that I have used my energy to get to this planet, how it is that I have used my energy while being here in this planet. And I know that I have set the course for perfection. And in that perfection, there is imperfection. So one of the things I was seeing today in my expression is that I had an experience where one of my children, they did something. And in them doing what they did, it reminded me of something that happened to me in my schizophrenic break. In my schizophrenic break, I made the mistake of allowing a trauma, a wound, to take hold of me. And in it taking hold of me, I have the memory of that wound. And that memory of that wound is that I have an imaginary friend. I have an imaginary friend. I have an imaginary partner. And in having this imaginary partner, I created an imaginary family. In creating the imaginary family, the family that I have in reality is oftentimes put against or pitted against that imaginary family. So today in real life, my real daughter did something. And as my real daughter did something, it stimulated me or it triggered me into a response within myself. I knew something was incorrect, and I looked at it, but I didn't put enough effort into it immediately. I put it off for later on. And as I put it off for later on, I saw that it disturbed me though. Now, I'm pointing this out because I want to make sure that I'm speaking the absolute truth to all my inner children, to my 1-year-old, my 2-year-old, my 3-year-old, my 4-year-old, my 5-year-old, my 6-year-old, my 7-year-old, to my 14-year-old, to my 28-year-old, to my 36-year-old, to my 54-year-old. I'm currently now 44. So I'm setting this melody in the tune that is based on truth, because I see that I have made a mistake in the past based on lies. So now I am inclined to speak the truth and the truth only. So as I'm having this experience with my current daughter, and she did something, and I went to parent, and I realized that how is this okay, someone in the chat is asking, how many children do you have in this reality versus the imaginary one? In this reality, I have 6 children. In the imaginary one, I can have as many as I choose. It depends on what the stimulation is and how bad of an agitation it is that I have in the wound. So now I saw that I had a trigger from my current daughter, and and I went to parent her, and I recalled that, you know what, first, when someone triggers you, the first thing is to recognize that it is not the person that you should look at first. You should look at yourself first. And that was challenging. So I put it off. Ultimately though, I went to the park and I sat down in nature, and I allowed my spirit to show me what it is that happened. And I saw that I, in wanting to misparent my own daughter, was actually parenting the imaginary daughter. And as I was parenting the imaginary daughter, I saw that I was making the imaginary daughter be perfect. And as I was making that imaginary daughter be perfect, I recognized that that is something that is based in an impossibility. And it is me putting the energy of my frustration into that imaginary daughter. And that's how I account for the misplacement of the energy. So rather than dealing with the truth of the matter that I did something incorrect to allow this imaginary, not the imaginary, sorry. I did something that I allowed the physical, real daughter to allow me to be disappointed. Instead of taking accountability for that, I went into the imaginary daughter and I made her perfect. And someone in the chat is asking, what makes you want to have an imaginary family when the outcome is not only ignoring your real family but yourself? That is exactly what I'm saying. It is in my hurt of the disappointment of seeing that my daughter was doing something wrong, which she is allowed to do something wrong. She is allowed to be herself and be egoic at times. It is me who, in having the disappointment, facing the disappointment, chose not to accept her for who she was being. And instead of accepting her for who she was being, thank you for your question, instead of accepting her for who she was being, I chose to go off into my imaginary world. So when I go off into the imaginary world, I don't have to concern myself with her at all. Now, that is something. Thank you in the chat to Tater Tots Mom. Tater Tots mom. uh, I do appreciate your question, and I appreciate your compliment. Now, what I want to say further is that in me seeing this, it helps me, aka Shelley, it helps me to not build that imaginary family, right? Because I suffered that schizophrenic break, and in suffering that schizophrenic break, I allowed myself to have that as a trauma. Now, if I ignore that wound, then I keep building and building and building onto that relationship with that imaginary daughter or that imaginary family until I have an episode. And that is what I'm working to actively not have, because every full moon I have a rise in my emotions, and I tend to have a rise in my emotions every third full moon, so every quarter you would say. And I'm seeing where when I do this type of a work of exposure, I have nothing on the third full moon to expose. My mind is not wired and triggered into the emotionality of releasing that heavy charge of lying to myself. So that is the emotional expression that I'm having in this Cancer new moon as it relates to family, family intrapersonally, and family interpersonally. Because um, how do you say it? When I parent my inner family, my intrapersonal family, my 1 year old, 2 year old, 3 year old, 6 year old, up to 7 year old, all of my children within me, when I parent them correctly and taking accountability for the things that I have done, then I can parent externally, then I can parent internally, and then I won't be triggered to react to my daughter's imperfection or perfection and want to punish her for something that she did not do. And that is where I take it to this other insight that I had today, which is that there are really two types of people in this world. And the two types of people are the egoic and the intuitive. We have different races or different classes or different genders, different ways to separate ourselves. And as we have these different ways to separate ourselves, there's really only one way that I see in uniting our being, and that is being spiritual. And in being spiritual, the one way that I see is the intuitive being. And this is only the type of being that allows for the other being. The intuitive being allows for the egoic being. It is the egoic being that does not allow for the intuitive being. And when you're being the intuitive being, something that I'm seeing very much clearly for the first time in this new moon is that the intuitive being at times is egoic. However, the intuitive being at times being egoic does so by being in the flow of nature, does so by being the flow of the nether, does so by being the flow of the force that is existing, as opposed to going against the force. So the intuitive being at times is egoic, but is intuitively egoic. The intuitive being is following the spirit, whereas the egoic being dispels the intuition. Though it pimps the intuition, it takes from the intuition and denies the intuition its access, denies the intuition its, what do you call it? Denies the intuition its instructions. And this is where I see what's happening. Tater Tot Mom is saying, can I ask you, have you tried to sit in quiet, close your eyes, imagine you at an age when things were the worst? Hug that little boy, take his hand, and walk him to a safe place and let him go play. I have done similar exercises, and in doing those exercises, I see that it's a good way to, it's kind of like somatic therapy. It's a good way to calm yourself and to to de-escalate a situation, as well as to get your inner children to trust you when you pay them the attention that they require. It says, Taylor Top Mom says, I'm 57 and it times helps me to be quiet and hug my inner child, the one ignored and unloved. Yes, definitely. I agree with you on that. I was not aware of the inner child situation until after I had my schizophrenic break. It's after I had my schizophrenic break that I became aware that I had all these different inner beings within me. So I thought that because I'm 44, I'm currently 44, I thought that because I was 44, that's all there was to me. I didn't know that me at 44 years old had a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, all the way up to a 39-year-old, 43-year-old within me still. And that all those parts of me had a voice, and particularly the wounded ones. And the wounded ones were the ones all the way 1 to 7. Those were the most wounded. And then came the 18-year-old. The 18-year-old was the absolute, and currently is still the most wounded, which has to do, according to the chakra years, if you practice the chakra system. According to the chakra years, that is the sacral heart. Sacral? No, that is the solar heart year. And that is, for me, has been the most pivotal year. And Taylor Top Mom says, to do it traditional every day. Yes, that is my goal. My goal is to practice my spirituality every day. And every day I open myself to the aspect of the inner child. Every day I open myself to the aspect of the chakra system. Every day I open myself to the following of the moon, because the moon is the only thing that I see about, what do you call it? The moon is the only thing I see that helps me to govern my emotions. And it is my emotions that keep me going where it is that I'm going. And your comment says, I see a man who carries a lot. I want to reach out, grab your hand, and just be. That's all. And in this conversation, we are having each other as mates. You could say we are having each other as soulmates. Greetings, inner standing. Greetings, greetings. Yes. So it is the moon phases that allows me to have my sane mind, coming from a schizophrenic state. If it wasn't for the moon phases, I would not be able to sit here right now with my sane mind describing what it is that I'm describing. I would be triggered out of my mind to behave insanely. And with that, inner standing, you would have to, if you choose to, re-watch this one, because I'm about to step out of this portal. I'm going to close this portal. And I thank you all for being here, and trust that you will have a beautiful night and continue to have a beautiful rest of your life. And this is where I say Ashe and Amen, and I close this portal. Thank you.